second or third oldest, next to winemaking, I guess. The first mention of it is right here in Genesis. We were, my group, the Magi, wise men, we were what you would call astrologers, stargazers. And we did things like we would spend a lot of time looking at the stars. That's why my scrolls, that's why I can't go in with my charts, because we use these charts to plot the stars, and we could come up with all kinds of charts and stars and methods of telling the future and telling people, giving advice, etc. And that's what we did. And let me say this. This is an old profession, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute because it's old. And there's something I want to bring into this thing of being old because we came into existence, we were first mentioned in Genesis, but if you go back in your scriptures, in fact, you won't believe this. In back your scriptures, there's a book called Exodus. And if you go to Exodus, I guess again, this chapter system is crazy. Exodus chapter 7 and 11, it mentions about Pharaoh had wise men, and they had a little run-in with the guy by the name of Moses and his brother Aaron. And they were called wise men too. Again, same word, kakom. We were there then. And the reason I'm saying is because, we were a profession. We were one of the oldest professions. And so you need to understand that there are certain rules and certain things we did. And it really, frankly speaking, it really didn't matter what country we were in. This Exodus, this is in Egypt, but it didn't matter. We were all over. And as a matter of fact, we were also part of the world's oldest bureaucracy. And so, kings came and kings went, et cetera, but we stayed around. I mean, I think I get it like you guys have governors and presidents, that kind of stuff. They come and go, but, your bureaucracies, your departments and other stuff, it stays. And, well, that's how we were. Kings came and went, conquered, killed folk, but guess bureaucracies, we just hung around and just kept going. And again, but because of that, it brought about great consistency because guess what? We were able to go back thousands of years with our stuff and with our studies and with our discipline. So we were well established in terms of what we did. And so anyway, make a long story, let me bring it forward a little bit because where we really came into prominence was at the time of a guy that his name is Daniel. And in Daniel chapter 2, it was a little incident. Matter of fact, this is why, frankly speaking, which is why I'm here, because we never forgot Daniel. Daniel did something for us that we never forgot. It seemed that Daniel was a wise man, the wise man. We'll get to that in a minute. But he was a guy from Israel, and he was in a place under a king called Nebuchadnezzar, one of the most infamous kings in all of history. This guy was crazy. And, of course, the thing about Nebuchadnezzar, you have to have a sneaking admiration for the guy because he kind of knew our profession was really kind of hokum. He found out, and we'll talk more about that later. And he had a dream, and so, of course, as is the case, our job is we go and the king calls us, we come in and bring in all charts and et cetera, and so the king calls us in and asks him what he's supposed to do based on the stars and records, et cetera. But this time, Nebuchadnezzar called us in and said, I had a dream, and I need you guys to interpret it. Well, of course, our normal method is we ask him, give us the dream and we'll give you the interpretation. He said no, because he suspected we were just half hokum anyway. So he said, no, you tell me the dream and then you tell me the interpretation. Well, needless to say, we couldn't do that. In fact, if you look back at Genesis, look back at Daniel 2 too. In fact, I love this. And you'll see this again when I go more into my story, because we were truthful with him. We said, you know what, King? We can't do it. In fact, just to show you how we were. Again, we were a profession, but we were like you would call lawyers, I guess. We had our, things, if you will. But you guys get charged $300 an hour from these guys. But anyway, we answered, in fact, in 10, matter of fact, we said, one of the head guys said, King, we can't do this. In fact, he said, King, we recognize that only the gods can interpret this, and we ain't that tight. Of course, now Nebuchadnezzar kind of had a few words and said, I knew you guys are charlatans. In fact, I'm so angry, I'm going to kill all of you unless one of you can come forward and interpret this dream. Well, that didn't sit too well with us. In fact, guess what? We were in trouble because none of us could do it. Fortunately, well, maybe unfortunately as it will be, Daniel was numbered among us. He was one of the wise men. He was one of the chief wise men. And so the king's order was going to go to kill him and his people too. And so I guess one guy ran him and said, Daniel, Daniel, the king is about to kill everybody, you included, unless he gets an interpretation of this dream. And so Daniel went and was able to interpret the dream. Saved us all. And we never forgot that. In fact, if you look at Daniel, it says that after that particular episode, Daniel was appointed chief over all of us. And that was fine with that. Again, put like this. Daniel, for us, we knew he was legit. He was better than all of us. He was the truth. In fact, Daniel was so good and he was so truthful until we kept all of his books and we kept all of his records. Because we went on with our profession as it was, but we knew that there was something to Daniel. There was something real special about him. And he had a connection. And we didn't quite understand it, but we knew that he did have a connection, and we made it a point of keeping all of his books and keeping all of his writings, everything he had. We kept it over the centuries. And again, and as it were, because again, we're a bureaucracy, anytime the name Daniel was mentioned in our group, we stopped and listened. Because we knew this guy, first of all, he saved our bacon, number one. He kept us from being killed. But number two, we knew that he was the real wise man. But anyway, again, as I said, our bureaucracy was kept going. And, of course, there's something else, too, by the way, and I want to talk about this. In fact, I met earlier. In fact, I stayed with, you guys call him Professor Sago. I stayed with him for a week or so. And interesting guy, a little weird, but so am I. So he fit right in. I like it. He's part of our crowd. But anyway, he was talking about something. He said he recently had a trip to Egypt. And he was saying how he was fascinated by the thought process. And we were talking about it. And he was saying that, and he was discovering about what I was saying a minute ago, is that we have, even though I don't live any longer than you guys do, but we have, because of our writings and our readings and our literature and our education, we have what is called a collective consciousness. We don't live any longer than you, but because of what we know, because it's lasted for thousands of years, we know stuff from thousands of years ago, and we talk about it like it's yesterday. You know, it's that collective in fact, he was talking about that in Egypt, how the people talked and lived, and the people that were educated talked like that. And he found it very strange because here in your land, you guys don't seem to do that. But, you know, I talked about it because this collective consciousness, again, what I was just describing in terms of Daniel and his writings, etc. You know, by the way, this was over 500 years after Daniel had left, by the way. You need to know where my time period. Daniel had been dead and gone for 500 years. And so by the time it got to me in my life, all I had was his books. And, of course, by the time you need to understand, his books, I didn't study James' books. We just knew where they were, you know, and sometimes we look at them from time to time, but, you know, we knew where they were, but we were still going about our business, doing our stargazing and working for our clients and getting paid, etc., and so forth and so on. My story, though, started. Let me tell you when my story started. It started one day when Ahmed came to me, you know, wanting advice, and he wanted some advice involving, he wanted to purchase some camels for his business. And he wanted to know, was that a good thing? You know, and so he asked me, and he gave me my customary bribe, you know. And he wanted me to, you know, go up and figure it out. So I took the money, and so then I went upstairs one night, you know, as I had my little place up on the roof, because, you know, in that time, you know, by the way, let me say, I'm from Persia. I'm from long way. I'm from Persia, and so we had our little roofs, etc. And I'll get back to that thing about Persia in a minute, because we were way, way on the other side, you know, about 1,500 miles from where Jesus was. We were long way. But I went up to, you know, do my stargazing. I took my charts up with me, and I was looking at the stars, and I was plotting, you know. And as I said, our profession had a dirty little secret. And that dirty little secret we talked about earlier, in fact, that if you look at Exodus and in Daniel, we didn't know it all. In fact, our guessing was at 50 at best. Of course, we didn't tell the folk that. You know, please, we have certain professional standards to uphold. You know, but we didn't tell the folk that. But, you know, when Ahmed came to talk to me, he wanted advice. As I went upstairs and I trudged up and I went up to my roof to do my star plotting, you know, I had to come face to face with some issues that I had. You know, in fact, all of us, you know, we had issues that we didn't know what the solution was. Example, you know, Casper, he had a drinking problem. He spent too much time imbibing in the juice. Melchor, he had a gambling problem, you know, and he couldn't seem to find a solution for that. My problem, I had problems with my eldest son. He was, you know, kind of going astray, etc., and my wife was unhappy. I didn't have any solutions for that. And so as I went upstairs to plot the stars, you know, I had my own issues, and my boys, Melchor and Casper, they had issues too. And so as I went upstairs to plot for Ahmed to find out about his camels, I was faced with a situation. I had issues that I needed to solve. And the stars weren't going to solve them, and I knew that. But anyway, I went up in the back of my mind, but I went up, you know, to discharge. I went up to do my, you know, so I could have my charts all plotted out. So when I went to Ahmed, I'd have my charts plotted, et cetera, and show this star is in this particular house, et cetera. And so therefore, based on that, this for his house, and based on his astrological sign, and I had all that, was getting ready to go upstairs. So I was finishing that up, et cetera. And so then, as I was observing the stars, I looked up and I saw a star that I'd never seen before. You understand? I see stars all the time. I know where they are, et cetera. And so, but this star was different. I looked up and I saw this star, and it was a bright, it was in an area of the sky that there wasn't a star before. And I looked at the star, and I looked up, and it struck me. This star, I'd never seen it before. Now, of course, me being a star plotter, I'm starting to get curious. I'm saying, wait, the star. And you know what? Something happened, and I said, wait a minute. This star is new. I've never seen it before. I don't know. I told Melchor and Casper about it. They didn't know. They showed them to it, and they saw it. They didn't know either. And I said, you know what? Let me go back and read Daniel's books. Let me see if I can get something out of, remember Daniel. Let me go back and look at Daniel's book. And I went back to Daniel, of course, and I went back. By the way, you understand about us Persians. You understand us Persians. We stored everything. We kept books on everything. In fact, it was to the point that if you go back to, I guess, a guy by the name of Ezra, if you go back to one of our earlier kings, Darius, he went back and consulted those books himself and discovered about Cyrus when he let the children of Israel go back to Jerusalem. He discovered that, yeah, they were supposed to go back, and he gave them some more provisions and everything. But again, even the king, Persians kept everything, and they kept it all stored in the library. Even if you didn't do it, you knew where to go to find these scrolls. And so at that time, I went back and said, let me go pull up Daniel.